Look at the beautiful color on the bottom of that. And it just plain tastes good. It's real sourdough.
Hi everyone. Today I'm going to make my sourdough bread. I want to show you how I put it together. Now, for many years, this has been going on almost 40 years I've been making my own bread. I've gone through many phases. I went through a phase where I copied my mother-in-law's recipe and I used commercial yeast. Eventually we moved out to the farm and I started using starter, and I would do kind of a hybrid. Sometimes I'd use some commercial yeast with the starter, give a little boost. I would wait for the starter to get all bubbly and measure it and time it and keep track of what ratio of water to starter to flour. I've gone the entire route. I have followed bread makers from downstate New York. I've followed bread makers online. I followed a chef out near the Albany, New York area that I took courses with. He was a pastry chef and very learned with European style breads. And it was a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, and I've evolved, really truly evolved. Well, over the course of the last couple of years, I have discovered what's called a no-knead version of the bread. And in this version, I take it even a step further than that, because I discovered how to be truly laid back about this stuff, and it does not require the stretching, the pulling, the turning, all of the rest of the stuff that so many recipes call for. This one is super straightforward. Having a chemistry background, being a pharmacist, helps me to understand a lot of the different dynamics of a recipe like this, and so I'm going to share with you what I've discovered. So what I've got here is just a stainless bowl. And it doesn't matter that it's stainless. You'll read online, especially with the older recipes, that'll tell you it needs to be a non-reactive, non-metal. No, it doesn't. This works just fine. So I put the pan on my scale, and yes, I use a scale. That is not just from my pharmacy background. That is understanding that this works out just plain better when you measure it. So I'm going to put my bowl on my scale, and this one's kind of cool. See, it pulls out like that so you can actually move it. And I'm going to hit 0. I'm going to bring it down to 0. Now, this I happen to know is 12 ounces. It's done by volume. Liquid is done by weight, and then the volume marked off. So I'm going to pour that in just because I want it in my bowl before I'm going to 0 it again, before I add the starter, because I have found that if I start with the starter, it turns into a gloppy mess down at the bottom. So I want just 4 ounces of this. And I'm going right straight in with it. It's going to take almost all that I've got right here. But that's okay, because I'm going to make more. I'm just going to add to this gel. I used a lot of it this weekend. The kids came over, and I made brunch. I did one of my favorite things for them, which is a skillet. And I put sourdough on top of that. So I've got 4 ounces by weight of my starter. A little high or low doesn't really matter. Now, you'll see some people online will tell you, and some recipes will say that your starter should be floating if it's really active, and that's true if it's really active, but I have discovered that this does not need to be really active. This bread will work out just fine with what people call a sourdough discard, or a sourdough that hasn't recently been fed. I've done it both ways. I've killed myself over it, and I've found that it's absolutely unnecessary. All right, now I'm going to go in with just 20 grams. I'm going to change this from ounces to grams. So we're going to go to just 20 ounces, and if you have ever made any of these or 20 grams rather, if you've ever made these, you would understand that that's a considerable amount of salt, and that's okay. It's for a reason. It's 20 grams because the salt not only functions to flavor the bread, it also functions to retard the yeast growth, and that's important because I'm going to just walk away and leave this alone. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm not going to keep messing with it. See, at this point, I just want to make it homogeneous. We just want to stir it in. It just makes my life easier. That's all. But going forward, I'm going to put it back on my scale. I'm going to 0 my scale again. And this right here, this is my favorite flour to use for this recipe. This is King Arthur's, and this is the part you really want to pay attention to, unbleached bread flour. Right? That's important because the bleaching process leaves behind chlorine and some other chemical additives that make your flour whiter, but will prevent your starter from rising and being active, because the yeast that's in this flour is a contributing factor to what is going to help this to rise. So I'm going to do that to ounces, and I'm going in with 1 pound, 4 ounces, or 20 ounces, depending on how your scale measures it or reads it. All right, now what I need to do I'm done. That's all there is to it. That's all that goes into this. Now, the hardest part about this is not doing anything else. So what you're gonna do is get this all stirred in, incorporate it all together. It doesn't look like it's gonna come together for a minute, and then all of a sudden it will. Now, if you've never seen, if you're looking at this right now thinking, wow, that is not gonna come together, it is. And one of the things that I realized with this particular recipe was that it looks like there's not enough moisture, but trust me, there is. This is going to sit anywhere from 12 to 24 hours without me touching it. And what's gonna happen is that all of the liquid in this between the starter and the water that we added is going to completely hydrate this flour. Oh, I forgot to mention, your water should be filtered. If you don't get it out of a gallon jug, a lot of times I use the whey for my cheese making, but if you don't have that, that's okay. Just make sure the water's filtered. Again, any kind of treated water is gonna have chlorine in it, and the chlorine does the same in the water as it does in the flour. It kills your yeast. So if you've ever killed a starter or wondered why you don't have a really great starter, it could very well be that you're using crap flour or that you're using bleached flour. So pay attention to that. This tool that I'm using right here is not necessary. It's one of those frivolous things that I helped myself to one day on my way by when I stopped in at the King Arthur flour store in Vermont on my way either to or from New Hampshire, and much to my son's chagrin, because he hated going there because he knew he would be in there forever. But I picked it up as I saw it there because this is in fact a dough whisk. And I like it for this because, well, I have them. I invested in it, then I have it, and darn it, I'm gonna use it. But it also seems to work better than just a plain wooden spoon. Although you can get away with a plain wooden spoon if that's what you have in your drawer. This is just about there. Now, that looks pretty shaggy. If you've ever made bread and you've kneaded it, you know that this does not look right. And you're most likely thinking, this is a joke. Nope, not a joke. And yes, it will look right after about 12 hours. It's going to look entirely right. So this shaggy little ball is going to be a beautiful dough ball. Then the water completely hydrates this flour. So now what I've got is this handy little Campbell container. And I like this for a couple of reasons. I like it because it has lines on it to tell me when my dough has doubled, and I like it because it has a lid that seals. Now, that's a double-edged sword. I can tell you that right now, because the lid will keep it from going everywhere, but it will also create your very own homemade bomb. So, if this goes too far too fast, you're gonna have a boom on your hands. And if you don't think down to wake up in the middle of the night, you're very sound sleeping. So, I'm just gonna, I know, I'm fussing over the littlest bit, but you don't understand, when this goes in your sink, it's really hard to get out. So, I'd rather have it in the bowl. And you know what? I was raised as a pharmacist, and so every little last bit of inactive and active ingredient needed to make it into the vessel. Otherwise, somebody could die here. All right, so probably not in this case. Habit. What can I say? So now, why am I pressing this down? Well, because I want an accurate measurement. I want to know how much I've got. I know, trust me, I've done this so many times. I know in my sleep how much I've got. But I'm pressing it down because I want you to see where your dough ends up. It's going to be just at about the quart line. So when this is ready, now, if you had a really active starter or you have a nice well kitchen, this could, in theory, come up to your 2-quart line within 4 to 6 hours. I've had that happen. But I happen to know how old this starter is, and I don't think it's little this time. I think I got a good 12 to 24 on it. And that is that. And I will come back to you when this gets up to the 2-quart line. But right now, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to tuck it up on top of my refrigerator, because that happens to be the warmest place in my kitchen, and the place that I have found it rises the very best.
Okay, so here we are, it's day 2. I made this yesterday, as you called, just a few moments ago, and I sprayed this container with pan spray so that it wouldn't stick coming out. And as you can see, it's doubled in size. Remember, it was down below this 1-quart line here, and now it's up nice. It's double. So now what I'm going to do is show you how you turn this into a bowl. All right, so I've got my little scraper here that I like to use, and I got a little bit of flour on my board, not too much, because I need some friction in order for this to work. And I'm just going to pop this right out. You see how nice that pan spray works. And when you do this, don't forget to spray the top of this container as well as the bottom, because if it gets really crazy and it goes all the way to the top, you're going to have a hard time getting it off. So what I'm going to do now is very simple. It's this motion right here. And what I'm working is just this right in here. So I'm just going to take and just start spinning this. I'm not going to beat it down. I'm not punching it down. I'm just tightening the skin on it so I get a nice shaped loaf here. And when you look at the bottom, if you've done this correctly, you're going to have a little belly button on the bottom. That's how you know you got it the way it should be. So we don't want it super floured, because otherwise you're not going to have the friction that it takes to do this. So it's very simply just this right here, and it turns it into a beautiful bowl. You'll use this all the time. I use this technique for my pizza dough. I use it for any roll that I'm shaping, my sandwich rolls that I'll show you in another day. So now that I got a nice shape on it, I've got this guy nicely floured, but I'm going to put just a little bit more of an insurance policy in there, because this banneton, just going to go around, make sure that it's all the way up, because as this loaf rises, I want it to come in contact with really well floured. Now, I never washed this thing, so it's got kind of a buildup on it, which is just what we want. So I'm going to leave it just like this. I'm going to put a little tiny bit of flour on top, because I want it to look pretty when I go to slice it. I'm going to use my lime, and I'm going to slice it after. I'm just going to leave this alone. I'm going to put it back in my nice warm place, which in my kitchen is the top of my refrigerator, because there is a heating duct up there, and it stays nicey toasty in here, a few degrees warmer than the rest of my kitchen. So I'm going to walk away, and I'm going to leave this from 2 to 4 hours, and that will bring it up just a little bit. So the first rise was 12 to 24. If that doesn't work out for you, you can stick it in the refrigerator and come back to it. This is going to go 2 to 4. If this wasn't going to work out for me, I would stick it in the refrigerator and I would bake this off tomorrow morning. But I've got just about enough time this afternoon to get this done. So I'm going to walk away, and I'll see you in a couple of hours. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours now, and as you can see, this doesn't really get exceptionally huge at this point, but it doesn't need to, because remember, we didn't knock it down, we didn't punch it down, we just shaped it. So now this right here, this tool is called a lame, and you don't really need to have this. I collect these things. It's been 4 decades that I've been making bread, so over the years, a little something here or there, gift or what have you. But if you don't have this, you can use a really sharp knife. You could just use a razor blade, which essentially all this really is anyway. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to put a little slice on it, because I want to give it room so that it doesn't just blow up. Now, I've got my Dutch oven here, and this one is, I'm not sure if this is a 2 or a 3, but probably want to say about a 2.5 quart. I like the smaller one because I want it to be, really tall when it gets done. Now, there's different ways you can do this. You can flip this out into a piece of parchment and then use it like a sleigh and get it down in there if you want to do that. Over the years, I've tried putting this in a preheated oven and letting this get really hot, but then you're dealing with a screaming hot black pot. There's just a lot of things that you can just try not to even think about the different ways that can go wrong. I just found this is the easiest way, and it's simple, and I'm not going to say it's absolutely foolproof, but it's a lot more foolproof than messing around with a 500-degree black pot. So I'm just gently going to flip it out. You can see how nice that just comes out, and into the pot it goes. And that's all there is to it. You can just plop it down. It's going to come right back up. So now this is going to have oven spring that's going to bring it all the way to the top here. I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm sticking it in my oven, 415 degrees, because I'm running a convection bake. If you're not running a convection bake, it should be about 450. But you got to mess around with your oven. So I'll see you back in a few. Okay, forgive me. I'm not trying to make you dizzy. I just want to show you what's going on. So we've been in here about 40 minutes. I've got a convection bake going at 415. Now, mind you, I've done this a whole bunch of different ways over the years, but this is what I have come to find the easiest. So we're 40 minutes in. You remember what this looked like going in, and look at that. It's right up to the top. So I'm going to take that lid off now, and I'm going to slide it back in. I'm looking for an internal temperature between 200 and 205, but I'm also watching the color. You see the way that the cut that I made opens it right up like that? It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And what you'll find is that the interior will be just beautiful. So I'll be back to you in about 20 minutes. Okay, so here we are back 15 minutes later. I said 20. I set it for 15 because I don't want it to go over, and I'm glad I did because look at the beautiful color on that. I can tell right now, I'm going to temp it, but I'm going to tell you that it's at 200 degrees. I've been messing with this oven, so I know. But, always pull out your pan and give it a test just to make sure. But I'm going to pull this right now, and I'll show it to you when it cools. And there we have it. We're good. Okay, so here we are, a few hours later, but not very many minutes of actual work. Look at the beautiful color on the bottom of that and the color on the top. And the crust is just right. It's going to be beautiful and crunchy, and I'll show you pictures of the interior. But I gotta tell you, for the amount of time that it took me to actually mix this, and then I give it 12 to 24 hours to rise, depending on how active everything is, and then shaping it, letting it rise another hour, 2, 3, 4 hours. And if that doesn't work out, I refrigerate it and come back at it and then bake it. It takes about an hour to bake it. Look at the reward. I mean, seriously, look at the reward. Yeah, it takes a little planning, but honestly, in the end, this loaf, I don't even know what it would cost in your grocery store. Around here, I know it'd be $5 or $6. This cost me less than $1 to make. But it's not just the frugality. It's the fact that this is a fermented loaf. It comes from fermented food. It's better for you. It's healthier for you. And it just plain tastes good. It's real sourdough. I highly recommend you give it a try. I've done a lot of different things over the years, a lot of different methods, but this one went in a cold pan pot into the oven. I left the temperature alone. I used to mess with it. I don't mess with it anymore. I don't drop it down, take the lid off, drop it down. I just didn't get anywhere. This oven is pretty new to me. It's only a few months old. So I've had to play around and get used to, how much crust I would get, what kind of color I would get, what temperature, with the length of time. I needed it to get to 200, so I knew the interior was baked. Just, don't be afraid to experiment. I know I'm, kind of a sciencey kind of person, but, you don't really have to be. Just play around with it. It's worth it. The outcome is just beautiful. And there's only 2 of us here, but we'll slice this. We'll take what we want. We'll keep it in the bread box. We'll freeze the rest. We'll keep it. Freeze is beautiful. Doesn't last very long. I don't know why we bother. But we bother to freeze it so that it stays really, because there are no preservatives, but it stays beautifully. So give it a try. Send me your notes. Tell me what you think. Ask me questions. Whatever. We'll go from there. I'll see you soon.